Hello, welcome to the Environmental Management Commission meeting of November 24th. We have a relatively full schedule today, and unfortunately, we're going to have 3 of our members joining us later. So I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting with those that are present, and we'll note who's here. I'm Georgine Adams, the chair from District 9. John Olson, I see, is at the table. John, usually only by a voice that disappears on us, so glad to have you here and hope this joint in-person and by Zoom meeting goes off well. It's all a learning experience for us. So John Olson from District 1, or excuse me, District 4 is here. I see Lee McIntosh from District 6, Elise Robinson, wave, from District 2, and Rick Gaffney from District 8. John Burns got out of class early.
I'm here.
From District 1. Melissa Cardwell is from District 5. And am I missing anybody else? And I believe that Carrie OPE and Dee Fulton will be joining us later, and we might see John disappearing, John Burns, back to class at some point. So we'll try to keep the shuffle and make sure that we always have a quorum. So having a quorum, I call to order the meeting. My computer says at 9:04. The welcome to everybody. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes from October 27th. Could I get a motion?
So move.
John, a second?
Second.
From
Second.
Gaffney. Thank you. And any corrections or discussion about the minutes?
This is Commissioner McIntosh.
Yes.
I had one correction. I don't know if I just said the wrong thing, but on page, I have it written down. On page 13, paragraph 2, the last sentence, it should be, and whether you go forward or back in, you're going to have to back up, not back in, unless you drive in sideways. So in should be up.
Okay. Peter, you got that?
Yes.
Any other corrections or comments about the minutes? Do we need a motion to amend with the correction?
So move.
Rick, a second again?
Second.
Any other discussion? Well, everyone who approves the minutes, now, do you want a roll call, Peter?
Yes, please.
It was a yes, please. All right, we'll run through it as I see you on the screen. Yay or nay, John Olson?
Yes.
Lee McIntosh?
Yes,
Oh, it skipped me. Georgine Adams, yes. Elise Robinson?
yes, here.
Rick Gaffney?
Yes.
Melissa Cardwell?
Yes.
And John Burns?
Yep.
I think that's all who's on. All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. With that correction. Statement from the chair is welcome. I think maybe we might have time at the end to have Peter and or Kira. Oh, I should introduce Kira. That's what I should do. Kira Wong, who's sitting there on the screen at least, is our current deputy corporate counsel, stepping in for Sinclair, who had a baby and is being a wonderful man and taking time off to help with that new infant, which is always appreciated by us mothers.
Good morning,
and-
everyone.
We can maybe talk later about the new rules for next year about Zooming meetings and having a place for people to attend in person. I don't know if we need to do that right now. The next item is public statements. Do we have, I understood Jerome Warren wanted to make a comment.
I'm Jerome Warren. You have my written testimony. I'm testifying on agenda item 7BI, the Na'alehu sewer. The EPA Enforcement Division came to Na'alehu on November 22nd. They looked at the sewer connection on my property and at the gang cesspool on the first lane. They talked, the 6 people, those are the 6 enforcement people, talked with me and some of my neighbors. Prior to their visit, they fined the county $28,500 for the county's Pahala sewer because the timeline for compliance was not met. This commission continues to ignore the EPA gang cesspool closure mandate on county-owned sewers in Ka'u. Thankfully, the newspaper is keeping a closer eye on this boondoggle. You must realize that there is no pot of gold at the end of the recycling rainbow. The question is, how much more money will the county need to pay in fines before these gang cesspools are fixed up? They don't need to be replaced, they just need to be modified. Please keep in mind, cars with gasoline engines have catalytic converters in front of their mufflers. This improves air quality. Septic tanks in front of the Ka'u gang cesspools will improve water quality. All else is folly. Mahalo.
Thank you, Jerome, for your comments. Peter, is there anyone else?
No further testifiers, Chair.
Okay. I should also note, sitting next to John, it's kind of squished, little bitty guys. It's Ramsey Munzer. That is you, Ramsey, right?
That is me.
Okay, thank you for being there. We'll get you involved for sure. The next item is item 5, our unfinished business. The first item is for any of us who've been working on our priorities for the year to give a report. I'll kick off with saying still trying to track the life cycle assessment contract that the recycling group is working with a contractor on. Unfortunately, the recycling group has had family emergencies and disappeared. Sennaberg and Chris Chinchance are also out of the office. So it's been a little frustrating. We are trying to nail the data set that the contractor is going to use, and it is progressing. It hasn't gone away. The other thing on my list is, again, in the spirit of sustainability and LCA, I listened to the recent TEDx meeting that went on most of the day ironically, right here where I live, although I didn't go over to sit there in person. It was a lot of inspirational talks. We definitely have a mayor who cares about sustainability and the circular economy. And so I think we have open interest in the things that we might recommend. There was a lot about the values of this island and community in protecting the land and the ocean, as well as having Kuleana for everything we do, basically. So it was an inspiring day, and I look forward to future activities in that regard. I'll talk about some of the other things I've been up to as we go through the agenda. Anybody else want to report on items they have on their priority list? Elise Robinson.
Sorry, thank you. I'm looking into the educational pathways at our local universities to help students get ready for the requirements of positions open at DEM. HCC does not offer any, obviously, civil engineering degrees, but I'm still discussing with the dean of, oh, John, you might know, Mr. Matthews, about the options there for education, as well as the requirement needed to be in the work field before getting hired at certain DEM positions, but we're still talking.
Was that Bruce Matthews?
Yes, Bruce
Okay.
Matthews, yeah. And that's all I have.
Okay, now that's great. One of the things we need to figure out is how do we support the personnel needs at DEM? Anybody else would like to make a report? Rick?
Yeah, just a quick report. The sewering of Honokohau Harbor is proceeding finally. $2.2 million has been released for the planning, and hopefully that'll take us into the bid process. It's not enough money to do the job, but it's enough money to get it designed and move it forward. And we have a strong commitment from the Department of Land and Natural Resources to get that done.
Great. Anybody else? Seeing no hands. Nope. I have to quit muting myself. They're doing construction around me, so I'm trying to make sure you guys don't have to listen to that. These were the priorities that we set at the beginning of the year that were kind of personal efforts we were each going to try to make to keep things moving along outside of the meetings. Since this is our last meeting of the year, we'll pick this back up in January and see whether or not you find it to be of value to either keep on doing the priorities that you picked before, whether you would like to revise it or just skip it as being unnecessary. But we'll have that conversation in January. But over the holidays, you can be thinking about whether that's the kind of thing that would be helpful for this group. I appreciate it, but then that's me. The next item is follow up on what we covered the meeting before. Request was made to continue talking about the solid waste funding options paper that we looked at last time. I had added in some of the comments that were made at the time. But if any of you have had some additional thoughts, and if there is a reason to put together some specific recommendations to go to DEM or the council, we can consider them. Were there specific things you'd like to continue talking about? I know, Elise, you had some concerns that we weren't looking enough at revenue sources.
I think that there's a lot here to continue talking about, but I have nothing to add.
Anybody else? Now's the time we're to talk about it. Well, hi, I see Dee Fulton has joined us. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you.
Dee is with the district. Now I'm gonna mess it up. Eight,
District
seven.
7.
This
They
is
have-
Commissioner.
yeah, Lee
This is
Mc-
Commissioner McIntosh. I'm not sure if it would fall under enterprise fund, but I thought if the county had set aside a certain percentage, kind of like they have the 2% fund that would go towards the operations of the wastewater and landfills, that, you know, comes off at the top rather than having to be allocated. Similar 2% fund, that maybe that would be another alternative to consider.
Perhaps, Ramsey, you could talk about how the budget works for solid waste. And you've talked before about the percentage that comes off of the general fund. Is that a set percent, or do you have to argue for it every time?
Aloha, everybody, and thank you for being here today in person, and Gary and John, and Elise here sharing the same room. As far as the budget, usually the finance department give us certain instruction to prepare the budget. They start with a status quo. So what you do is you go around the numbers and the services, salaries, wages, and everything that we've done this year, and we have to maintain the same bottom line dollar figure. That means doesn't consider inflation, doesn't consider any other contractual obligation that may impact the contracts, such as consumer price index to some of our contracts. So once we do that, we determine the shortage, because you cannot stay status quo without adding inflation and the contractual obligations. So currently we about $1.5 million short. So that means services is going to be impacted. So we have to do a supplement. We have to fill certain forms and justify why we cannot stay status quo, and we need to offset the additional contractual obligation and inflation by justification. Usually, the solid waste, it's a certain percentage of general fund. It's not set fixed. It's based on what will get approved through finance department and the mayor's office. Hopefully this kind of give you an idea of the solid waste process.
Is there, I'm not familiar with this 2% set aside for water?
That 2%, to be honest with you, this is the first time I heard of it. Usually wastewater, it's last year we only got 1.8 because it's usually based on ratepayers. It's not subsidized because the services get charged through rate fees. I know there's a talk about trying to get us some type of tax subsidy to get us into the wastewater. But this also requires some legal understanding of, could we subsidize rent users by tax money or not, or it has to be certain criteria for it. But currently, I think we almost, basing it on the rate users. I know last year, I think we had 1.8 million added to the entire budget from general fund.
Do you
Our
have more
wastewater
information,
fund.
Lee, about what this
What-
2% is you're talking
What I
about?
was referring to was the PONC fund, the 2% PONC fund, where they set aside to purchase land for conservation. That was what I was referring to, have something similar for wastewater and the DEM. In other words, you're duplicating what they're doing for them. I don't know what you would call that per se.
Yeah, if you could share any information, if you could email me any information that you have, let me look into it deeper.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Commissioner Cardwell. I think wasn't that land fund something that that we all voted on? Because I remember that was on a ballot a few years ago, or I'm not exactly sure when that land fund started, but I'm wondering, Lee, maybe you know about that. I wonder if you wanted to do something similar, if it would be something that we would, as a county need to vote on.
Right. It was passed by amendment by voting on it, but because I guess that way you can't change it. You have to have another vote on it by the people. But the county could do something similar on their own. It doesn't have to go for a vote to the people, but then they could change it or rescind it later if they wanted to. Whereas with the amendment process, they can't do that as easily. So it's kind of like set in stone.
One of the items, speaking of financing, that at the tail end of this write-up from last time was to explore how we can work with the regenerative ag, water, energy, and environmental management committee of the council. And I did talk with Tim Richards about how can we work together? What can we do as EMC to help out the council, and are there some mutual priorities? He thought that'd be a really good idea, and the way that we're going to proceed for now will be he and his vice chair, Haleka Inaba, and Rick Gaffney and I, as chair and co-chair of EMC, are going to continue talking about how can we focus down on things that could work. I mean, Tim's got some ideas, but to get some coalescing around us, and then we'd go back to our respective commission and talk about specific recommendations we could make to the council. He also was talking about maybe we could bring in somebody from finance and Ramsey and also talk with them as well to get some more information and then proceed. So that will happen. Hopefully we'll start set up some kind of meeting between us in the next couple of weeks. In addition, I submitted a personal comment, and Tim Richards, who happens to be my representative, also made a comment when the council was looking at the TAT, the transient authority, the hotel tax, to see whether or not there could be some percentage designation going to the county agencies that are having to deal with the cost presented by having our population doubled with tourists. And that got shot down in council. But Tim is still working on ways to be able to direct and sequester some of that money. So it's not the end of the story, but it's another way to look at dedicating some funds specifically that would go toward solid waste and wastewater. The other thing I thought I should bring up, I'm from Minnesota, mostly. Well, I lived there for 30 years. They passed a constitutional amendment called the Legacy Act. And the legacy was to, basically, it's like the GET, our sales tax, that added on, and the money's collected, I think it was 2% or 0.2%, I forget the exact number, but it generates a fair amount of money, several $100 million a year. And it gets dedicated 1/3 to preserving the environment, and they do a lot of fishing and whatnot in Minnesota. So support that. The other third would go to cultural events and supporting the arts. And then the other third would go to more hardcore environmental management with a specific focus on the 10,000 plus lakes in Minnesota, so water. But it was an amendment to the Constitution of Minnesota. It took about 10 years to work that through and get it passed, but it had a lot of public support. Whether that's something that to look at for the state of Hawaii, might be something worth sounding out. The biggest problem I think we would still have is, oh yeah, Oahu would take all the money and we'd get a piddle like we usually do in the neighboring islands. So anyway, just another thought to pass on to you. Any other comments from others?
Well, let me jump in just a little bit.
Okay, John, and then I'll go to UD.
I'm looking at this paper on the funding options. And, I was reading the comments they made about the idea that I've been talking about as a fixed fee, a percentage fee at the point of sale. And I agree that all of these bullet points that are raised here are very valid, but none of this is going to spring full born down to the ground, right? I mean, you're going to have to start with a minimal amount of funding to move the program forward so that you can identify what the actual costs are. And you have some money to do that with. So it kind of grows on its own based upon, the information that you garner using the monies that you're getting. And of course, it's going to be an ongoing process because what we import, what comes in, we really have difficulty controlling. We can only deal with what's on the ground. And that can be problematic to say the least. So it's going to have to be a process that will be ongoing in terms of what the actual fees would be. But as it is now, we don't have a budget to even start it. I mean, where would the money come from to even get this thing off, any of it off the ground?
You're talking about the money to administer the collection program?
Well, it isn't a collection program to begin with. Collection is in there, but even those things that simply have to be disposed of.
So just identifying whether or not you have a single fee or a variable fee?
Yeah, it's going to move depending upon what its actual cost is to dispose of.
Well, that's one way to build it. I think one thought is just, you put a dime on everything. And it doesn't matter how big or complicated it is to dispose of.
Yeah.
What?
That's where you will have to start. You'll just have to pull the rabbit out of the hat and say, this is where we're going to begin. And whether it's a penny or a dime or a quarter, whatever it is,
you could kind of loosely tie it to the denomination of the total sale. But yeah, we're going to have to get a funding stream to make this thing grow. Because certainly we're not going to pull that off sitting here. Yeah, I mean, just the department is going to have staff. All of those things are going to have happen, and it will grow out to be covering the actual costs of the disposal of whatever it is that we've taken in.
Yes, it's very complicated. And I guess the question is, as far as EMC goes today, what are we going to do about it? Do we want to set up somebody to go chase it down and work out those details? Do we just give the generic recommendation, explore this, Ramsey? What kind of follow-up does the commission feel should be made on this concept?
Well, let me just weigh in one more time here and then I'll shut up. Okay. He doesn't have a budget to explore anything at this point. I mean, the current budget is every dime is accounted for. So any new program is going to have to come at the cost of some other program. We have to figure out how we get a starting point, whether it is a 1 cent disposal fee on every dollar spent on the island, or however you go about it to get a method to move forward on. And then you can expand that out to actually figure out what our actual costs are. It isn't like it's a business. No, we're not trying to make money on it. We're just trying to cover the county's costs, i.e. the people who live here. But we have to draw a line in the sand there somewhere and say, this is where we're going to start. And whether it's a penny or a dime or a nickel or whatever it is, isn't right? Isn't really the point at the moment. The point is that we have to make the decision to start it and set up some kind of a funding stream that will support it to get it legs.
Well, as I understood the discussion about the TAT, it too presents some hurdles, administrative hurdles, just how to set it up. Insofar as each county has to get their own money and it doesn't funnel through with the rest of the TAT that goes to the state. So there are some other learnings maybe available to us from other activities, but it's a little bit of a different beast. And perhaps that's something Rick and I can talk with Tim and see what kind of ideas they might have for who and how to even begin investigating how that might work.
Well,
I may recommend something, I think, literally at the legislation that we have. Technically, solid waste under taxes, we have to fund the solid waste program. That's how it's stated. So to me, is legal need to give us some ideas, because that solid waste program, the intent was back then when they created the taxes just to probably build facilities and handle the waste. Now it's grown to 100 different cycling, recycling, reduction, diversion programs. So the idea, we have moved so far away from the main intent of that program. So what is the legal options that we have outside that, taxes that already stated legally that, we're supposed to provide the service for? So could we use the admin rule as a vehicle to set collection fees or pay as you throw? Is that legal? What other legal maneuvering we could do to subsidize this type of program, since it's already, part of the taxes?
Well, if I could The first thing we want to get away from is calling it a tax.
I agree.
It is not a
But-
tax. It is a disposal fee.
I totally agree, but most of the people that they call us, you know, they all under the impression we pay taxes for solid waste. And if you read your property tax, part of the property tax is to offset the solid waste program. Therefore, we need to get a clear direction. So you're right, I agree with you. It's a fee.
Yeah.
It's just like you pay your taxes for the post office, they build it, but when you go to the post office, you have to pay the fees to mail your package. It's a service, it becomes a service.
Right.
So, but like I said, I think if we get clear legal direction from our council, so we can start focusing on the avenues that we need to take. Otherwise, if we chase avenues and come back later and find out we cannot do it legally, it will be a waste of effort.
Ramsey, in between the drilling that's going on above me, you said you had already talked with the corporate counsel to some extent. Was it a formal request? Is
It
it
was
something,
not.
Kira, we should make a formal request to corporate counsel to tell us what the options are legally for collecting monies directed toward solid waste?
I agree, you have to make a formal request, I think we have not.
Yeah, I think that would be a request that Ramsey can make to his designated deputy corporation counsel in conjunction perhaps with someone from finance to work in collaboration on exploring those avenues or what options would be out there. But that would be more appropriate for DEM's deputy to explore.
Okay, is that something you can do, Ramsey?
We can, I think, we tried it in finance, actually. It goes back to finance holding and we could follow up with them because they said they run it through their corporation but we could do that. I think even if it comes a request from the commission, if we had every possible option, we cannot just, I mean, the commission could make a request, we could make a request. I think finance took the lead on it, but I don't know if it really went anywhere. So we'll follow up with finance department also to find out. There's so many departments and entities. It's just the way our county functions.
What I think I just heard there was a request for a motion from this body
To have the,
to have the director explore what he just stated. You wanna
the
state-
legal options of collecting for solid waste beyond the current
methodology.
methodology. I
Okay.
guess.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Second from Rick, any more discussion?
Well, if we, we have to have a motion.
I thought you
I-
just made one.
I made a motion, but I need a second so we can discuss it and move
Rick-
on,
Rick Gaffney seconded it.
okay? All those
So
in
now we're
favor?
in discussion.
Yeah, just to let you know, you guys are commission, you're an advisory commission also. You have your own counsel, you could research it to advise DEM. So it could go both ways. So you guys could make a request to your council, separate from DEM council. And you guys could maneuver it and come back with an advisory to the department and the county.
Kira, since you're going to be the recipient of such a request from us, didn't sound like you thought that was appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's more appropriate for the department's deputy to explore since this body is advising the department. I think that this discussion is sufficient to direct the director to pursue that avenue. I don't know that this body would need to make a formal request in writing to accomplish that.
This is Commissioner Cardwell.
Leah online, our department council, maybe she can.
No, she's not.
She's not, okay. Maybe the two councils need to talk and figure it out. Let us know.
Yeah. Melissa, you had a comment, Melissa Cardwell?
Yeah, I wanted to say that, but yes, it's our, it's our role to advise the department, but if we're unclear about the legal avenues of collecting fees, well, then we can't really advise the department on that. So it seems like it's a bit of a puzzle, is figuring out, what are the avenues that are available to collecting these fees. Because I do think the pay-as-you-throw program, and I've said this before, I think it's brilliant in a lot of ways. And yes, there's a fee, but the thing is that people would be paying this fee and they'd be getting a huge thing in return, which is not having to wait in line at the transfer station, to dump their garbage. And I think that it's almost this issue of breaking a bad habit. I think we're kind of in this bad habit where we've gotten used to not having to pay to dispose of our trash, but that comes at a huge cost. And the cost being that there's trash everywhere, all over the roadsides. I mean, I've said this, I know, multiple times, but driving from Kalapana to Hilo, I mean, there's just trash everywhere. And so I think that there's a huge benefit to this program. But like I said, if we don't know the legal avenues, to collecting these fees, well, then there's nothing that we can advise the department. So we have to figure out what are those avenues. How do we start a program like this? How do we start collecting money so that we can implement something like this that I think is going to be a lot more effective and a lot more efficient?
Well, I mean, isn't the bottle bill kind of a model?
Yeah, and I don't know the history of that, of how that started.
Well, I mean, that I'm not even really sure how it got started. All I know is that I think we voted on it. I think it actually appeared on the ballot.
Well, maybe that's the
let's
question.
back
How do
up.
we get something
Not
on the
solve the
ballot?
problem. I think we still need legal counsel. And who asks for legal counsel is the issue. And so I like that option of each of us. Ramsey, you go to your corporate counsel, and I'm going to, in this meeting, to you, Kara. The two of you figure out who's going to write up, what are the options and how, what's legal, what's not.
Okay, so after the meeting, I mean, it sounds like Ramsey initiated something with finance. So if he could follow up with finance to see where that is, and I'll loop in with Malia, and then we can discuss how we move forward on this issue. But I have received the request. Noted.
Okay. Do you want to withdraw your motion, John?
I withdraw. Is it my motion or Tim's?
It was your motion.
Yeah, okay, I withdraw my motion.
All right. Are we okay with that as a process, guys? And then we'll get back to you and let you know what the next step would be. Okay. So Ramsey, you go to finance. Kira, you talk in corporate counsel, and we'll see how we want to formalize getting an actual opinion written, I guess. Okay. D, I put you off for a long time. Do you remember what you were going to say? Thank you, John.
Yeah, no, simply to reinforce, I really liked what Lee had to say
Sorry,
about it.
excuse
I
me.
really liked what
Sorry,
Melissa.
Dee. Technical issues, 1 second.
Stand by one.
The audio changed for a moment. My speaker didn't turn off. My door. 1 second. Sorry, can we do a 2-minute recess? Okay. Right.
Okay, we are taking a 2-minute recess for whatever Peter needs to do.
I didn't bring the charger for my speaker, so. Let's see.
So you need to stop the recording?
This should be quick enough.
Okay, whatever.
TV. Mic check. Hello.
We hear you. I hear you.
Okay, we're good to continue.
All right, meeting is resumed. Whatever the foremost of us. So Dee, you were talking, sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair Georgine. Yes. We always strive, I think, for progressive fees or taxes, but I really like the idea of a pay-as-you-go or earmarking the transient accommodations tax, the TAT. When I lived on the mainland, I was drawn to islands even then, and I made several visits to the Cayman Islands. And I just want to note that, Grand Cayman is a small island with a small population, but there's very little poverty on Grand Cayman. Why is that? It's because they tax the heck out of their visitors. And we have a situation here with so many issues on our island, obviously, beyond the scope of this committee. But we deal with wastewater and solid waste, and we have serious problems in both of those departments. Now, if we can draw a metaphor, if somebody has a home and their toilets are broken, that's really not the time to invite visitors in, right? You want to get that fixed. You want to be able to take care of this issue. Here on this island, our toilets have been broken for a long time, and we just kind of stuck our heads in the sand and ignored it. But if we're going to invite people in when our toilets are broken, then I think we have to ask those people to help us make the repairs. In other words, we really need to take advantage of the fact that we are a very attractive tourist destination. And if you can follow my thoughts here, that means raising taxes on tourists. And I'm not really a huge fan of capitalism, but there is a phrase about charge what the market can bear. The people that come here have disposable income to come to Hawaii. And I think that that's a good reason to tap into the TAT. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Dee. And I will just reiterate what I heard listening to the council meeting, and I forget which one. So the last council meeting, you can listen to the recording as well. It didn't go over. The request was made to dedicate TAT to certain things. Actually, the environment was not one of them, but it was more a focus on the DNLR. But at this stage, we may need to go to your individual counselors, council members, to do some lobbying. I think they've got one more reading on that TAT bill, if I'm right. If anybody knows better than me, speak up. So there is still an opportunity. If the commission would like, we could send in our own comment on the TAT to the council and voice an opinion. Not sure where you want to take it. And I'm talking to my representative, and others can do that. Whether the council agrees with Dee, along with all the other
Georgina,
people with that TAT money in this county. Who is
This is
speaking?
a-
Lee?
Sorry, yes, sorry, it's me. I suggest that we wait to hear back from the finance or corp counsel about the legal okays or no okays before we request a TAT request. Let's look at all our information first.
It may be a question of timing. I'm not sure when the third reading on the TAT bill, I think it's a bill, is. And maybe Peter and I could chase that offline.
Maybe another recommendation, maybe you guys could invite somebody from finance tax division and have them give you the kind of rundown of what you can do and not do when it comes to taxes, because they the expert. They represent the county. So rather than us trying to kind of go around in circle, try to speculate what we could do and not do, or I think let's, maybe as a commission, you could invite the expert matter to give you some heads up of what's going on. Just a recommendation.
It sounds like a really good idea, Ramsey. Unfortunately, our next meeting is not until January, the end of January. So again, I think need to check on the schedule for council relative to the TAT, which has its own limitations on what the county can do versus the state and all this other stuff that I don't really know enough about. Melissa, you're squirming. Did you want to say something?
Maybe I was just giving a subconscious. No, I guess the way I see it is I think it would be a good idea to voice something in regards to the TAT. If I mean, the worst case scenario is that they just say, no, that's, we're not going to do that. It just makes sense to me that, visitors do contribute to, to our solid waste. And I knew the number at one point, how many visitors visit the Big Island. I can't remember that number offhand, but I want to say it's close to 1 million people a year, something like that, which is pretty considerable. So, if we're collecting that money, why not allocate some of that to deal with the solid waste that's generated by people coming and visiting? I don't know, it just makes sense to me. And if there's a time frame that we're working in here, then I think that's the thing to pay attention to. If there's going to be another reading, I would like to know when that's happening. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else?
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I don't think we'll get anywhere with the TAT because essentially all the state did is they X'd out the TAT that they were giving to the counties. And they said, if you want it, go pass it yourself. So if the county passes a TAT, all it's going to do is restore money that they lost when the state rescinded their portion. So there's nothing to go around or fight over. And that's probably why everything was pretty much shut down during the council meetings.
Yeah, basically, it's already money that was in people's budget to begin with. And so this is just replacing it.
But I guess the money might have been in the budget, but the money wasn't in the budget to go towards solid waste. And I guess that's what I'm saying. We won't know unless we ask if there can be money that can be taken from the TAT and diverted to deal with the solid waste.
Again, all I can say is from my watching the council meeting, Tim Richards had moved to dedicate some funds to our parks, which the tourists go to in hordes, and that was shot down. No can do. So let me find out, and I will get back to people on what the timing is and when it's ripe for us to put the plug in, but not overly optimistic. Is that okay? Any other follow-ups, discussion on this funding for solid waste? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to a very brief status report on what I've lately been calling barriers to private recyclers, permitted interaction group, PIG, that was set up last time. Carrie OPE, who still hasn't joined us, I don't think, and Melissa and I are that group. And we've begun contacting people. I've been formatting kind of a tracker sheet to keep track of who is doing what to whom and what the problems are and what the barriers are. So we're in the beginning stages of that, and we'll continue proceeding. If you've got some ideas on who we should contact that you think we might have missed, let us know.
Chair, Commissioner Hope has been here for the last 29
Are you
minutes.
there? Oh, okay, great.
Hi, yes.
I'm not seeing her on the, oh, there you are up at the top. How'd you do that? Anyway, okay, great. Any other comments about that?
I got a question, Georgine.
Sure.
Can you quickly just go through the list of people you're talking to that are providing the input on what their issues are? Companies?
Okay. If I could, the companies, and not all of them have been contacted. Mr. K's, of course, capturing what he'd done, but there's some follow-up that I believe Carrie's going to do. Atlas Recycling, Business Services, Hawaii, Big Island Scrap Metal, Hawaii Earth Recycling, Compost Hawaii, Pacific Biodiesel, Reuse Hawaii, Habitat for Humanity, the thrift stores that are running the reuse centers. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not we want to tackle some of the big box stores that are doing some collection, like batteries and CFLs, Target, Walmart, Home Depot. Maybe towing companies, still not sure if we want to spread our net that wide. And then one category I'm calling plastic recyclers to be, since we don't have any others other than, well, we don't have any that are really doing it except for some art activities going on. I've been contacted by a company called Resynergy that wants to do pyrolysis of mixed plastics. So that's our list right now. And if you've got some other ideas, shoot them to us, or contacts that we can try to find out. We're basically trying to keep the scope to what are the barriers presented by county and state regulations and operations and policies, and not we're going to do a marketing plan for you, but we want to know when have you run into the wall that falls under our purview as a commission to make recommendations for change to DEM or the council. Carrie, did you have any? Oh, there you're hiding in a pumpkin. That's why. Any other comment you wanted to make?
I don't. I reached out to, like you mentioned, Mr. K's, Atlas, and I actually plan on, I reached out via email, and then I actually plan on visiting them in person next week, just to, you know, get a face and get a contact and see how we can move forward.
That's great. Thank you. Ready to move on? Next topic. That is to review the latest proposed language on DEM rule number 917 regarding trailers at transfer stations. That is in our reference folder. And hopefully you've had a chance to look at that language. If you have some concerns to share, or if you think we're right to prepare comment on the proposal in support or not of the revision to allow trailers at 5 sites. I can start out and say, I think the changes that have been made, and as I understand, Ramsey, what we have right now, the last thing you provided to the council is what's going to be proposed as a change to the rule.
That is correct. Our last council meeting is, we went over the initial language that we have stated. It's gonna go out for public notices. We did receive your comment, the commission's comment. There's certain things that also we're gonna wait after the public hearing to see if there's additional language or comments that we may receive. It may impact the current language, so we could do one modification prior to publication and implementation.
So timing on that, you expect to actually issue the proposal for public comment?
Yes, I think Peter is sitting here. I think we're gonna start having the public hearings.
Around
Newspaper.
middle January, we're looking at.
Yeah. So we
Okay,
submitted.
so we would have a window to actually submit formal public comments from our January meeting. We meet January 27th. Is there still time, or should we do it now?
You might want to do it now based on this version.
Okay, I mean, that would be my recommendation. Let's go ahead and say, are we for or against, and what changes would we like to see, and write up comments that would go into the public comment period files for DEM.
Yeah, like I said, we so limited because safety is our #1 concern. And the trailer that was utilized for the safety purpose of maneuvering at the site was 6x9. I know some of your comments says 5x10, what have you, but there's certain comment we're gonna interchange, certain comments, safety is gonna trump other comments. So, but definitely at this time, go ahead and submit whatever you have, so we get started, get it started. At least the discussion started.
Elise.
I have a question for you, Director. So our last meeting, there was a concern about banning trailers at the transfer stations leading to illegal dumping. So with people who don't have the ability to load green waste or, construction waste or whatever into their cars. So is it possible that we could look at allowing trailers on certain days of the week that are not as trafficked, so the safety of having too many cars and trailers are limited to certain days? So because I think the other concern about having your personnel be responsible to let people know no more trailers is the same output as letting the public know trailers are allowed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday or something. So that, that there's still people who can use the transfer station rather than another problem of illegal dumping now being something that needs to be addressed.
The intent, as was addressed during the council meetings, to allow possibly one day, Wednesday of the week, for trailers only, because it's only going to be covering 5 sites. Currently, it's going to be 4 because Hawai'i is still under construction. So we're not talking about allowing trailers to all sites. I just want to make this clear to everybody. There's only 4 sites that we looked into, and that's, we're going to do some minor modification to allow trailers to come in once a week for green waste, for white goods, and for garbage to be able to use that facility. Residential waste with other vehicles, they're gonna offset that one day, because what we did, we targeted the 7 days facility. So hopefully, the human behavior continued to act responsible by keeping our island beautiful and don't pursue any illegal dumping, and hopefully they could arrange their waste for the next day, because they still have 6 days to use that facility. So 1 day for trailers should not hopefully trigger more illegal dumping. So definitely signs will be posted at the facilities, notifications would go out, but that's the intent.
So to reiterate, it's those 4 stations now, not 5. 4 stations will allow trailers 1 day a week, and every other station, no trailers at all.
That's correct. That's the
And
whole program.
so the 1 day a week at the 4 stations versus all the stations allowing trailers now, would that not lead to illegal dumping on those other locations?
We don't allow trailers now. So the idea is, since April of this year, we stopped taking trailers. And we cannot change that human behavior, but I hope people don't act irresponsible by doing illegal dumping. We haven't seen it. We've been no trailers at the site since April. We haven't seen any changes, but these sites, they're going to continue functioning the way they've been functioning since April. What we have been saying to council members since our last meeting, the last few meetings, safety is number 1. We have 2 safety reports that were done on these sites and determined that there's safety issues, especially the other sites, but they were able to focus on these 5 sites with minor modification, traffic plan, staff training, 1 day a week, just for a trailer to be able to maneuver. A bigger site than the others, so with a traffic plan hand-on, we figure we could accommodate the public. But like I said, it's going to be up to further analysis as we do. That's what the admin rule says. If we feel that safety is still an issue after we do that, we're gonna seize that operation again. So the idea is we're gonna try it. We're gonna do some accommodation, and if it works, that's good for everybody. If it becomes another safety hazard, we need to rethink about it. So once again, we cannot control people behavior, but I hope they act responsibly.
We have comment first from John Burns and then Rick Gaffney.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a point. I think those are all fair comments, because I share the concerns. Obviously, when you restrict times at landfill or any times or places that people can dump waste, you always run that risk of increasing the illegal activity. But it's also important to think on all ends of the spectrum. And if you look at the distribution of people and how they're going to behave with the landfills, it's still a small portion on those extremes that are likely going to be breaking the rules and dumping illegally because they can't bring a trailer of a certain size or multiple trailers a day. So I do think it's a good way to go about these rule changes, by making it and then seeing what the outcome is before being too concerned and changing a lot of things and adjusting until we know it does indeed in fact result in that. Because I think sometimes the best approach is to hope that people will act responsibly. And again, like from a distribution perspective, most will. And so time will tell if it really is a problem or not. But I do think the efforts are worth trying.
John Burns, you just, oh, there you are.
Sorry, yeah, no, that was all I was gonna say. I agree with Ramsey. I think it's worth just waiting and seeing how it comes out with what activities or how much illegal dumping occurs after the rule change.
Anybody else have comment?
I think Rick does.
Rick?
Yeah, I have a question. Every time I hear the subject discussed, the Waimea transfer station seems to be included in the list of those that are not safe for trailers. And I don't understand that because it's a circular transfer station that trailers can drive in forward and drive out forward with no backing involved. So I'm curious as to why that Waimea transfer station is always included as one of the ones that have a safety issue.
Rick, you're right. Waimea is one of probably the largest site, but unfortunately, when our safety committee took the trailers, considering the other traffic coming in, it became a hazard. I went there myself and sat there just to watch the regular traffic coming in. And as I was sitting there, because we allow reversing, this white Tesla comes in and it backs up and it reverses into the chute. And this truck comes in and cuts it right off. And they both get out of the car, try to fist fight. That kind of give you an idea. So I was standing there just within 15, 20 minutes. And I seen it with my own eyes, almost a fist fight between this Tesla driver and the truck driver. So it kind of give you an idea with these regular vehicles, you create the potential. So imagine the trailers, because the way the chutes are designed and the way you have to come in and reverse back in. And some people are just not patient enough to wait for the next vehicle. That's why I think with traffic control and just only allowing the trailers, maybe we can control that.
So is there a modification that would be required so that, or what's the modification that would be required so that the Waimea transfer station would work?
Detouring, signage, traffic plan for these sites, minimal. We don't probably need to do construction modification. It's just kind of the training and traffic plan, detouring, cones, other, these type of modification for these 4 sites we identified. And
All right, thank you.
Elise, you have question.
Thank you. So has there been, I understand your concern about safety. Has there been any accidents or any safety issues that have actually happened at the other locations that will not allow trailers?
Yeah, definitely, and near misses, staff.
I'm sorry, hang on. I'm having a really hard time hearing you. It might be the echo of the room or something. Is there any way that the volume can be turned up on your end?
You know, go closer to the.
Does anybody else have a problem or just at least watch out?
Just sounds like you're really far away. Maybe you're far away from the speaker or the microphone.
I would agree. There's a lot of reverberation. It's like talking in an echo chamber.
Could be because the big conference room we're in. Yeah. We're gonna continue trying, but it's beyond our control, so be patient.
If you want to take
Is that
another
better?
recess, we can move the tables closer to the camera.
Is that any better, or you guys
That
want
would
us
help.
to do this and reconfigure?
All right, we
Can we
can
do that, Georgine?
take another short recess. for moving furniture.
This, yeah, create a new table.
Yeah.
For the second. So the link to the language of the proposed rule is the second link. The first link I put up there, I believe, is the whole file for the agenda for today. But like I said,
There's,
I'm getting
this-
blocked out of it right now, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, wants us to log in or something.
Yeah, that it is not the coolest system in the world.
yeah, I don't know what the login information is, the username and the password.
Well,
It's-
it's kind of,
I
it's
thought
kind of
I
hard
had
to
it.
comment on something we haven't read.
It is. It, on the other hand, it's short enough, if I could find it. And I thought I had printed it out at some point. All right. Technical difficulties continue. Oh, I know what the problem is. I'm not sharing screen with anybody, am I? So I don't know, Peter, if you have more luck than I do in trying to get into
So you're looking for the revised text of the
the
rule
language,
draft.
right?
Okay, 1 second.
Except there's nothing recording, but other than that,
1 second. Where'd it go? Where'd the chat go?
okay, I think I have it up as a share screen. Does anybody see it? It's dated November 1, 2021.
Yep.
And it was what was provided too. So there's not a lot here. This is dealing with trailers so that they are prohibited, as Ramsey said, right now. So this is a modification that would say, except as provided below. So I don't know if Ramsey, you want to talk through this, but basically they did 2 safety reviews and came back with saying the only locations that are going to work are these 4 plus the
Do I leave the meeting?
the other one.
3 dots. Where's our 3 dots?
Who's talking?
Oh,
Am I talking? No, I am. So anyway, yes, they put the 6x9 because that's what they tested. They will designate which locations based on their safety studies, and that was the 4 plus 5 in the future sites. They've got to be registered trailers, and no reversing. And the director will notify the public. And I think we've made comment that notify them everywhere, signage and whatnot. So this is a simplified version that will be proposed in the next couple of weeks, sometime in January, I guess.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. So they were just asking, so we're just going over what we already went over before. I thought maybe they had already submitted new changes to be considered.
This is different than what we saw before.
Oh,
They've simplified it. They used to have that the mayor and corporate council had to sign off on which locations, and they took that out to allow the director to decide which ones work. And there was some other detail in there about the public notification, and that was simplified. Ramsey, help.
I have a question that transfer station users shall not reverse trailers toward the chute. I don't understand how they can use the Greenway chute at the Kealakekee transfer station in particular without reversing the trailer to the chute.
I think part of it, if we allow trailers only, so they could come in, drive without reversing because there's no other traffic. So technically, they could have the whole area to themselves. They probably gonna walk around the trailer to, to dispose of that waste into the chute. But that's the intent. If we don't allow additional traffic, it'll be easier to control rather than reversing. Yeah, both.
That's what we proposed again for the cam.
So do you want us,
Elise had some comment.
Thanks. What, in 9A, after review of site designs and safety reports, what guidelines were used to determine what is considered safe and unsafe? Was it Department of Transportation rules, or, what is that line that crosses being unsafe?
Our safety committee, who are qualified and certified to be safety officers for multiple departments, Public Work Department, Human Resource Department, and the safety officer within our department. So these are the safety officers that did the investigation and research. Part of it also the design, the return radius of these vehicles. So there's a lot of that goes into these type of report, definitely design parameters that we have to adhere to.
And what were those design parameters that said this is not safe and unsafe?
The turning radius. When you come in, you have to have enough space to be able to turn the vehicle. So that's just like when you drive on the roadway and you're making a right turn. That's what we call it, right turn, return radius. If you have a sharp return or a small return, you're gonna get in a car accident or you're not gonna be able to turn. So, everything has rules and standards that we have to follow.
I see. So you used the Hawai'i, what is that body, like Department of Transportation guidelines?
That and Department of Public Work, roadway and streets and return radius guideline.
Can we get a copy of the safety report?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the safety report went to to council and committee, and everybody has a copy. Peter could share the same report that was issued.
Okay, thanks.
Lee, did you have a comment?
so are we essentially pretty much the comments I made last time still stand? I kind of understand some of the reasons why they've insisted on keeping some of the wording, because instead of backing up, they want you to just kind of turn in, I guess, and that would be a lot more difficult in some areas. Yeah, because the main problem is that they don't want trailers to back in, so that's making it very difficult. But I mean, they're gonna pass what they want to pass, so that's essentially what my comments about the proposed legislation.
John Burns, your hand's up.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in on what Lee was mentioning and Rick as well. I mean, just as someone who trailers boats very often, I can't really see the logic in not reversing because you're almost, I mean, if you're driving straight in, you're reversing out. And so the individuals are gonna have to reverse and navigate and move the trailer one way or another. So I don't understand necessarily why or how you're going to avoid issues with people not being able to operate a trailer well by having them pull in directly and then reverse out versus reverse in and pull out. So just wanted to put that.
I think you just said it right, perfectly. I think you have the qualified people and non-qualified people. We're not in the business to try isolate who could drive and pull a trailer. But you're right. There's the few that could come in and like a champion come in and you got other 80% of the people that use the trailer, they hook the trailer on an actual car rather than a truck or an SUV. So, you know, we cannot, as a department, we cannot, you know, ignore that. I understand there's the few that could come in with no problem, but the rest, the one that created the problem, we cannot discriminate against that.
No, I mean, that's completely reasonable. And that's where I honestly, I more see the rationale for just not having trailers than allowing and having them, I guess, be unable to reverse. That's sort of what I'm wondering, because it's like if they pull in straight, they're gonna reverse, they're gonna have to reverse it out.
Well,
So
the
if
whole
they can't
idea, to pull in and continue circling rather than reverse.
Oh, Roger that. Okay, I see what you mean. Sorry, I didn't realize it was exclusive to pulling through.
Yeah, pull it through, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Then that maybe, I mean, and that might just be something that gets people. It may just be a change of language of simply saying transfer station users can only, you know, pull through a determined loop or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the whole idea, we're gonna have people on site directing traffic with a traffic plan and detouring. So rather than complicated in the admin rule, will be on site per site, how the detour and the traffic plan is going to control. Therefore, yeah, you don't want to go too much in detail on the admin rule, but side by side will be controlled by traffic cones and controls and individual.
Roger that. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
10-4.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way they do it on Oahu. I mean, the residential, again, the qualification, it's residential trash. I mean, their system is all pull through.
And as I understand, that's why they picked the sites they picked, because they're designed for pull through. And not a heck of a lot of the other transfer stations are. Rick Gaffney, you had comment.
Yeah, I want to comment specifically on the Kealakahe transfer station green waste chute because I use it regularly just with a pickup truck. And I cannot see how a truck or car pulling a trailer can make a 90-degree turn and end up parallel to that chute in order to be able to offload their green waste. I don't get it. It doesn't matter which way you enter, that chute has a straight line fence immediately adjacent to it, which is going to require a 90-degree turn one way or the other. Trailers don't do that. They're going to be standing off 8 to 10 feet away from the chute, which is going to create a huge mess potentially for the staff at the Kealakahe transfer station. So anyway, that's my comment.
Yeah, I mean, Rick, that's the reason we're doing it. The idea is we're gonna work on the traffic control, maybe re-alternate the chutes, maybe where the green chute currently now is not the right spot for it. So, you know, if it doesn't work, then we may not allow trailer at that site. I mean, that's the whole reason we're doing the admin rule is to look at these modifications and continue look at it from the safety and practicality aspect. And if your concern is, there's no way we could do it, even if we could move the green chute to different kind of alternate between the chutes, then you're right. Then that's probably, it's going to be difficult, and that site will be taken away. But that'll give us the option.
Understood.
I would like to say, oh, Melissa, you want to get your 2 cents in? Go.
I had a question about, does anyone know what percentage of, I guess, green waste is dropped off via a trailer? Because my concern is if, I don't know, if there's all these limitations around trailers, it's going to affect our green waste program and people just simply won't bring it to the transfer stations. I'm wondering how often are trailers used to dump green waste? I don't know if we know that.
Well, I mean, I can, having looked at this before when we did the design for the KO transfer station, most of the green waste is residential. In other words, the commercial guys, they keep it. They're composting. It's a resource. They're not going to give it away. So you're talking about properties of 2 acres and less generally. And because if you've got more space than that, then you've got more than enough room to have your own composting pile. So it's the small lot subdivisions that create the problem, and they're the ones that have a land use issue because they don't have available land around them to set up another transfer station. I mean, all of these transfer stations, with the exception, and I may be a little behind on this, but there's not more actually than 2 or 3 transfer stations on the island today that were not transfer stations or dump sites 50 years ago. So we continue to just reuse that same land over and over again for this purpose, and it hasn't kept up with population or anything else.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to have to call chair prerogative here and cut off this conversation. I do not hear consensus on any comments that this commission would provide to DEM at this time. So I would like to recommend that if you have comments during the public comment period, submit them as your own. Is that fair? Okay, and we can consider this again in at our January meeting, but I think we're going to be up against a tight deadline. If Peter, you can send out the safety report, I think that'll maybe assuage some concerns. And again, there was quite a vociferous conversation at the council around this, and as Ramsey and corporate counsel kept repeating, safety is the number one. We can't knowingly cause the potential for harm by unsafe, as John said, 50-year-old hardly designed at all locations. Yes, we need to improve the transfer stations in many ways, but guess what that takes? Money. So anyway, the end of that topic, if you will allow me. I don't think we're going to have time, but I'll open it if anybody has specific recommendations at this time. The last item on unfinished business was innovative funding for wastewater management. Wastewater money needs make solid waste lost in the rounding errors. So there was approved a resolution, or I'm not sure what it was, from the council that the Hawaii County group of county people get together, looking at legislative changes at the state level, HSAC, acronyms just don't stick with me anymore, to look at innovative funding for wastewater, because we've all got that problem. Everybody in the United States has that problem, and probably the world. So if we have any great ideas that you think the commission can further provide to DEM and the council, let us know, and we can talk about it. We have already sent 3 different letters in supporting going for an enterprise fund, look at those ESPCs, the energy angle of looking for efficiencies and cost reduction. And I forget the last one. Any rate, so there are several things that we have done at a high level, looking at specific to KLK, looking at resource management rather than waste management, recycle wherever you want to, but they've been at fairly high level. And if there's some specific things that we should be looking at, speak up. Rick.
I'm just curious, I know that we've made those recommendations, but I have not seen any response from the council regarding those recommendations. So particularly the enterprise fund, it just seems so obvious and opportune. And yet it seems like one of the many recommendations that we forward up that nothing ever happens. So does anybody know whether anything's been done to pursue that issue, that idea?
Ramsey, have you heard any?
I have not. Maybe you guys could follow up just to find out what's the status.
Yeah, I think we can include that in our discussion, Rick, with Richard Zenanaba.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm clicking the wrong buttons. That's one of the reasons I was so enthusiastic about it being able to have those meetings, is because I think we regularly request things of the council and then never get any response. And if our ideas aren't being pursued, then we're wasting a lot of our time.
Well, I do think I've heard mention of the enterprise fund concept at council discussions in passing. Rebecca Villegas has commented on it, but I don't know that any specific action has been taken. And I think that is fair game for our early discussions with Tim Richards. Any other comments? An innovative funding. I mean, one thing that we might want to consider for next year would be bringing in Stephen Holmes, who has a plethora of recommendations and the ways he's done things on in Honolulu. And we might just want to share some brainstorming with him. But again, the next step is, so we back one of them, so what? It just goes into the black hole at council and DEM, because they've got no money to even study what they could possibly do. Similar to John's point about having some kind of disposal fee at point of sale. You need people to work it up. And anyway. Not seeing other comments. Let's move to new business. Oh, skip that. We have to go back up. Meeting schedule. We talked last time about shifting our meetings to be the 4th Thursday of every month, except for Thanksgiving. Is that right, Peter?
That's correct, yes.
Where we bump up the earlier week. On the other hand, we also have heard Melissa's got issues with Thursdays. John Burns has issues with Wednesdays. Is there a solution? The whole idea was we were trying not to overlap with council meetings, which they've got scheduled, at least for next year, on a couple of the fourth Wednesdays. And we thought maybe we were gonna miss the issue by moving to Thursdays. Anybody have other comments? Melissa?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So yeah, Thursday's the one day I can't do. I have work all day that day. So Monday, Tuesday morning, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday is the only day I'm not available.
I mean, our other option was, there were only 2 days, I think, Peter, that we conflicted.
Correct.
Council,
February, March.
February and March. So maybe we go back to sticking with the fourth Wednesday, except for those 2 days, 2 months rather, and switch them to Thursday.
Or the third Thursday, third Wednesday instead of the fourth Wednesday on those
Third,
ones.
that would not interfere. That still messes up John, but
I mean, Tuesdays work for me too. I mean, like I said, I'm fine if it's Wednesdays. It's got to be Wednesdays. It's just I teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so I'll always have some conflicts, but I'll work around as best I can.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. If we move it back to Wednesday for the month of Thanksgiving, November, I think it would work better if we move that also to the third Wednesday rather than right before Thanksgiving, because it really messes with my schedule because I don't want to work on Thursday. So it's just a lot more stressful. Thanksgiving week.
This is Dee Fulton. I concur with Lee's observation about that.
you need to start cooking that turkey right now.
Well, is there a motion in there somewhere?
Well, I guess the motion that I'm hearing is, no, let's go back or stick with the fourth Wednesday, except for February, March, and November, and scoot it to be the third Wednesday. And apologize profusely to John's classes. Maybe one of what class are you teaching? Maybe you could force him to listen to this wonderful meeting.
I'll see what I can do.
Any rate, I'm not supposed to make motions. Is that a consensus? Do we want to revert back to Wednesdays except for those 3 months? The fourth Wednesday and go to third Wednesday? Seeing head shaking, I need a motion.
If you need a motion, I so move that we follow that pattern you just described.
Okay.
I second.
And a second from Melissa. And apologies to John. Any other discussion? Do I need to do a roll call, Peter?
I don't know, is John going to vote for it or not?
I mean, yeah, that's fine. I'll vote in favor of that.
Okay, all
I
in
mean, if it's
favor,
unanimous, go ahead.
what, all in favor, say aye, wave your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. The fourth with 3 months shift on Wednesday. And Peter will send out a new schedule. Sorry about that. Okay, new business. These are just kind of starter thoughts. I don't think we have the time to go into any depth whatsoever. So I'm going to encourage you just to start thinking about them, and we can pick them up again in next year. The first is whether or not, because we don't have any, we should look at banning landfilling of certain materials. It's an approach that many other municipalities take to encourage recycling, i.e. you can't put it in the landfill, you're supposed to be recycling it. Biggest hurdle for us is you've got to actually be able to provide people with the ability to recycle. And then enforcement is not easy. But if we had an ordinance out saying you will not put green waste in the landfill, period, you will recycle it, because we do offer, albeit some limited, if you're working with the trailer, options for green waste recycling. Electronics. It is not illegal to throw electronics in landfill in the county of Hawaii. Should it be? And I'm sure there are those of you who'll be looking, oh, plastics, we've got to keep those out of the landfill. Again, very difficult to pursue, and also not really our biggest source of waste in the landfill. Construction and demolition waste, boy, I wish we had a better way. We've got one outfit, Reuse Hawaii down in Kona, and then we've got the Habitat for Humanity Restores that'll take construction demo waste. That's a lot of volume that's currently going into landfill. So there are some ways around that. Anyway, that's the topic that I was thinking about starting to consider. Elise.
I like the idea of, well, I assume the intent is to minimize what's being dumped forever on our property. But without a solution or a place for what we're banning to go, I don't think we should pursue that. So for example, if I didn't know electronics were not officially banned at these sites, but I do know I don't throw batteries or computers in my trash can, but there is a place for them. So if we're going to pursue something like plastic or other construction materials, there should be another avenue, another solution for the public to waste that.
Melissa.
Yeah, I agree with Elise. I think that I do like the idea of banning things from going into the landfill. I mean, we you know, the Gila landfill is already full, et cetera, but like Elise said, if people don't have a place to bring those other things, then they're just, it's going to end up being illegally dumped, you know. That's and currently, other than high five plastic, only number 1 and number 2 plastic can be recycled. I know that Shipman takes number 2 and Atlas takes number 1, but it's really inconvenient because unless you live near KL, you know, people from Kona aren't going to drive all the way to KL to recycle their number 2 plastic. So I don't think it's a good idea to ban those things from the landfill without a convenient place for people to bring them.
Other comments, thoughts? Again, this is just, you know, to begin thinking through it, and I wouldn't be ban landfilling anything. It would be very specific items that, yes, we do indeed have in place an alternative for people to recycle it. But it would be part and parcel of increasing the amount of reuse and recycle capabilities on the island. John Burns, you have John Olson.
Well, I mean, I stated this earlier and we've come full circle. In the last 50 years, we have created a grand total of 3 new waste sites for the island population of the island. and the population has tripled in that time. So, I mean, in my own district, when I first showed up here, there was almost 9,000 of us. And as of the recent census, we are now over 58,000. And those are just the ones that got counted. And we have absolutely no new waste disposal sites. I mean, we have rehab, a couple of them, but they're the same old sites. And of course, only one of them is actually located in such a way to really serve the community. Well, two of them. The rest
Well,
don't.
and I would counter and say they are not disposal sites. They're collection sites. We have one, count them, one disposal site, and that's in West Hawaii. So I was talking about things you actually bury permanently or maybe semi-permanently in the ground. And I agree we have challenges in the collection of waste, whether it's at transfer stations or private. That's why we've got this little big going on looking for barriers for private collection and processing of recyclables. So point taken. Lee McIntosh.
I would just like to say, I don't think we're even prepared or ready to start talking about banning certain materials because we can't even divert what we're trying to collect right now. I mean, if you throw stuff in a black trash bag, nobody knows what's in that black trash bag. I've seen people just toss big, huge tires in the trash can, even though I'm trash receptacle, whatever you call it, bin, and they're not supposed to. And I tell them and point to the sign. They say, "Oh, we didn't know." It's like, yeah, right. But that it almost comes down to it would almost have to be the county taking the trash and somehow diverting and changing it to where it needs to go. Unless you're just going to have just tons of setup where people can put stuff as they're going down the line or something. But I mean, the bins for collecting boxes, they're almost always full. And so when they're full, they just goes in a trash can. So I just think it's premature to start talking about banning them when we're not even really set up to collect them regularly.
Fair enough. Anybody else?
I see Ramsey left the room though, but I think, what if we could pilot a collection site? Like Melissa was saying, Atlas is here and Mr. Kays is on this side. We could test a site maybe on West Hawaii to collect certain types of plastics, 1 and 2, over a course of time, which diverts it out of the chutes, which could be brought back in bulk to those businesses that will divert the plastic. But Ramsey's gone.
It's a thought. It's also a cost to set up additional collection and needs to be justified and paid for. Again, I want to move on because we've got some really stuff we need to hear from Ramsey. Hopefully he hasn't disappeared entirely. Like I said, I just wanted to get you started. When you're all stuffed with turkey and the football game is a joke, well, what should we stop doing any landfilling? Anyway, think about it. The second item was a specific example where I was intrigued last meeting. Mike Kaha said that they were spending $500,000 collecting scrap metal at the transfer stations, having to collect it and haul it, and they take it either to Big Island scrap metal on the west side and to business services on the east side. God, I don't know where I live right now. Anyway, and they don't get any money from it, as I understand. They're just giving it to them for free, and then they do their scrap metal thing. It's another one of, if we let people know, here are places that will take scrap metal, Mr. K's, Atlas, as well as these other county contracted companies. Should we say, at least for bulky scrap metal, doesn't go on a landfill, doesn't go down the chute, the trash chute. Here's another place to put it, or here's another place to take it. Another thought. And it would free up $500,000 if the county wasn't involved in it, and if people were going and taking advantage of the private operations, which our PIG is going to try to contact those guys and see what gets in the way. But it, again, it's a big island, 2 locations, 1 on each side. Oh, for crying out loud. Why bother? No thoughts, no comments?
Well, this is Commissioner McIntosh. They would need to have satellite collection sites. If we're not going to dump them at the dump, then, or drop them off at the dump, then they need to have sites set up around the island, and that's going to cost them money, and that's why they want you to bring it to their storefront. So I don't think it would really work out, because I'm not going to drive 3 hours essentially to drop off, I don't know, maybe trying to think, what would you drop off there? Scrap metal, you know? I'm not going to do that.
Well, and one of the things we're looking at in the life cycle assessment study is, does it make sense from a life cycle standpoint to drive across the island to go dispose of some recyclable material? Is there really a net benefit? So again, I don't want to spend any more time. I don't think we have it to consider that, but I would like you to think about, maybe get outside the box a little bit of, are there some ways that we can throw up some legitimate good barriers as long as we provide alternatives? And there's some specific materials that might warrant that kind of response. So I'd like to move now.
Nadine?
Yes, Elise.
Can I have two seconds of an ask for our, I don't want to call it the PIG committee, but the committee that's going to go to the private
Barriers,
the private folks.
private.
Barriers. Could you also, I have an ask to see what challenges they had through permitting processes with regard to maybe commercial space. You know, what was their challenges if they needed to get that, I'm drawing a blank. If they had to rezone from ag to commercial, what challenges they had there, which of course is a cost, but there's a lot of other things that might not apply to this industry that rules, you know, the rules on commercial space.
Yeah. Not just DEM requirements, but other zoning requirements, other things. And we were looking more, or at least hope to look at more broadly, county regulations and processes that are just a pain and prevent activities. So yeah, thank you for that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have another question to add to that list. When you talk to the big recyclers, I'm curious, there are a number of large companies on this island that are metal fabricators. For instance, one of them just replaced all the railings at the Hilton Waikoloa. So my question for the metal recyclers is, do they already have relationships with the large metal fabrication companies on the island? And are they receiving their scrap or what's happening with it? Because it's possible that some of those fabricators are also doing direct recycling, particularly the ones that are using high-grade aluminum and stainless steel.
Good thought. Anybody else? Okay, I want to get Ramsey before he runs off to some meeting. Item 7, Legislative update, is there anything, Ramsey, that we need to know and squawk about?
The one that you had mentioned earlier that went before council about the privatization, public-private partnership. There's definitely this one, we tried to achieve this year to allow the wastewater the options of all the flexibility of getting some private funding. As you all know, Hilo is our top priority when it comes to the facility. And definitely, and he's, we've been meeting with elected officials to address that certain concerns about public partnering with the private sectors or privatization of certain facilities, because just the county does not have the funding. Even if the county finds the funding to rebuild Hilo, the big challenge is how are you going to find the funding to maintain your investment for O&M? So there's a challenge. We could get grants and loan and rebuild, but still a challenge. How are we going to keep protecting that investment we're going to do moving forward, so we don't fall in the same predicament that we have been falling in for the last 30, 40 years. So definitely that's one of our top priority. Council member Heather Campbell is leading that. And,
That was with the all county HSAC.
yes.
Okay. And again, the TAT issue hasn't finally resolved, and we'll find out the timing on that. Are there any other legislative issues that we should be aware of?
The extended producer responsibility, you guys probably are aware of it. This may surface back up. It requires the support to continue moving it forward. I know Senator Acasio and Nicole Lewin also leading these two legislation.
And that's at the state level. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
Request for updates. Our friends Nahalehu and Pahala, where's that stand? I understand you've recently met with EPA enforcement people. What's the scoop that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's good improvements moving forward. You guys are aware and cognizant that we had withdrawn our Fonzie based on the irradiated lagoon and based on the prior EA. So currently we are negotiating with EPA Clean Water Act and the enforcement on moving forward with a new EA. Unfortunately, the process here doesn't allow for a supplement. You have to call it a new EA. So we're going to be sending notification to all people involved within the community to give them heads up what's the next step is going to be. We look forward to a new, public relation with our constituents from public education point of view. Definitely having the constituents involved in the process making as we move forward. So there's good positive moves out of this. And despite we got $28,000 violation, I think the overall savings outweigh that violation to move forward. Hopefully we'll get better design, better system than what it was proposed.
Comments, questions?
This is Commissioner McIntosh. So the the fine was so that you could essentially change the design. Is that what I'm understanding? Because earlier I thought that essentially the EPA gave you a set date. As long as everything was done by that date, you didn't have to meet milestones, they wouldn't fine you. So I was just a little surprised that the county was fined for violation.
That was no surprise because the current AOC already stipulated the fines in it. Unfortunately, it was negotiated when the AOC was issued and signed. So the stipulated fine was part of the current AOC. And the reason that we got the stipulated fine because the design was not submitted. We submitted a design built outside the lagoon, but unfortunately the EA did not consider any other option beside lagoons. Therefore, that's why we got the fine, because the new design did not go through Department of Health given the time limitation. And the design of the lagoon was not acceptable to us. Therefore, we have to go through the process and we have to go through the stipulated fines. Moving forward, things is going to be smoother. I hope.
So do you feel that there will be more fines, or should that be the only one we should encounter as long as everything proceeds smoothly?
I think with us being transparent with EBA and everybody else's that involved in the Department of Health, I hope we don't see any more, but I cannot be the judge. I think we doing our own due diligence to start negotiating the new agreement with EBA. And we'll see how that goes.
So as I understand it, basically, we knew we'd take the hit on being delayed on the plans that we sent through, but we did not want to stick with a bad idea. Had we gone ahead and said, all right, we're going to build lagoons because then we won't get a penalty, but building lagoons is stupid, didn't make much sense. Is that a fair characterization, Ramsey?
That is a fair characterization, yes. We could have ended up having these major green swamps on 14 acres. That's why we did not recommend to move forward with it.
Okay on that? All right, the next penalty potential, the pretreatment administrative order of consent. You want to background us on that and what the likely process is going to be?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My mind was somewhere else.
Sinking in a lagoon somewhere. The pretreatment AOC.
Yes, this is has been signed and it's at its final stages with the Department of Health. So we got also a 2-year window of limitation to implement. So this is going to impact our businesses around the island, from dentist shop, dental shop, to restaurant, to industrial commercial entities. The idea is we need to monitor what these businesses are disposing into the wastewater system prior to just letting it flow within our sewer system. So if something needs to be pre-treated before it flows into the treatment plant, we need to implement that. So this is, we're gonna submit additional staffing and additional budget item for this year just to support that program as we move forward.
Again, my simplified version of pre-treatment standards is we should have and need to make sure that there aren't any commercial operations that are going to knock out the bugs we have in our current wastewater treatment systems. So if somebody is putting slugs of heavy metals or high or low acid or too many nutrients that overwhelm our systems, they are going to need to do some treatment at the site before they let it go down the drain to our treatment works. I don't know that we have on this island significant issues around that. I mean, we don't have heavy industry here. So it may not be the end of the world. But it takes working through it all and understanding what we've got and whether or not our wastewater treatment plants can handle the stuff they're getting. That's assuming we have working wastewater treatment plants at all. Is that, again, a fair description, Ramsey?
You've been nailing these right on. You must be an engineer, wastewater engineer.
I used to teach a class on environmental regulations, and wastewater actually was not one of my areas of expertise. I always brought in guest speakers for that class. But that's my general understanding of it. And I came from the industrial world where there was some really nasty stuff being put down the drains.
You said perfectly, that's true. Any discharge yard facility, if it's toxic, will become toxic to our friendly bugs that could do the treatment of the plant. We're gonna keep them healthy. We're gonna keep them active. Any chemical that, a good example, dental shop with mercury going into the system that could impact our treatment. High metals, high acid could change the bug's behavior. So yes, fat and grease from restaurant, the fog, fat, oil, and grease that also will impact and create a maintenance nightmare into the sewer system. So all of that definitely is part of that pre-treatment program.
And did you say that EPA is, or you've signed an agreement, you get 3 years to put a system in place?
Yes, the agreement have a timeline, and the timeline, I think within 2 to 3 years, it should be implemented countywide.
Okay.
I don't know the exact dates, but it's within.
All right, it's in that area, that's fine. And this is standard stuff elsewhere. The technologies to do pretreatment exist. The problems are pretty well.
This law existed in late 1980, I think 1989 or 1983, if I remember. So we were supposed to be in compliance 30 years ago, unfortunately. It also tied to the amount of flow that wastewater treatment as a whole, as a unit generate. I think the threshold was 5 million. So if it's a county or city or entity that reduces 5 million or more gallon per day of wastewater, they have to implement that pretreatment program. So countywide here, we exceeded the 5 million gallon a long time ago. So, but now we're catching up.
Okay, well, it's another one for us to keep track of if there are issues where, we need to step in as a commission. I don't think any of us would say, no, don't do any pretreatment. Who cares if we knock out our wastewater treatment plants? It's something that, yeah, let's do it and do it in an orderly fashion
Well, we
And
have no option. It's the law.
yeah, it's a law, but make sure that our constituents, the people in our districts that are going to be affected by it, understand why and what for and how to ease the pain, but it's a necessary pain. The last request for updates deals with another thing that was in our reference folder that I don't know if people could see. And that dealt with an initially proposed rule to deal with laterals, private laterals, and requiring inspection and correction of said laterals. It's been an issue that has been raised before at the commission. There was a proposed rule 20 that is in the docket. And now I just have to find it if I can bring it up, that dealt with that, but for whatever reason, before your time, naturally, you're constantly dealing with these older decisions that were made. This part of the proposed DEM rules, Rule 20, was tabled. It's sitting as reserved in the DEM rules. And I would like to know why and what the status is and whether or not they're likely to be reinstated, whether as the specifics that was proposed back then or something similar. Do people know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, definitely. We just talked about pretreatment. Pretreatment will allow us, as we modify the code, to include certain requirement, because the reason when we first started that code change for, I believe, chapter 20 and 21 were for council, and I took the liberty to withdraw that, and because it did not make sense at the time. That was presented to them for acceptance, and because there is so much work that we need to do, and we still doing anything, we need to make sure that we at least have.
I'd like to interrupt for a moment because we haven't really defined what we're talking about here. We kind of referenced Rule 20, but I'm not sure everybody has it pulled up.
Let me do a share screen if I can.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile just to reiterate what this rule is calling for before we launch into the status.
Okay.
And I just want to say it, since I have the floor here for a moment, that this is something that has been porpoising within this committee for the last few years. This is what I consider very low-hanging fruit. This is a rule that's already been implemented on Oahu with great success. Of course, there is the recognition that with any implementation of a rule, there needs to be enforcement, and that takes man-hours. But what it calls for in a nutshell is inspection of privately held laterals and the authority to enforce repairs of fractured laterals that may be leaking sewage into our beloved bays.
I don't know if you're speed reading this, trying to figure out which is the best one to show. There was authority to for the county to be able to go in and look at the laterals, see whether there were problems, and that the owners of those laterals had to fix them. There was a requirement for a corrective action plan. And one of the complaints that have been made is that, oh, there's stuff coming from the laterals and we don't have authority to look at them. So that was the purpose, as I had understood it, of this proposal. If you felt that it had too many shortcomings, Ramsey, to be able to even begin to implement it, my question is, what are you doing to fix those issues, and when are we likely to see a new proposal to change it? Because it seems like this is a worthy thing to have on the books.
Yes, and this one our high priority. Fortunately, we were able to hire an engineer that came from the city and the county that was dealing with the same issues in Oahu. So he's working on the code, he's working on the pretreatment. And he actually brought up that HRS already allows us to do that. So he's writing and strengthening the language that pertain to the code. So we've been fortunate that once again, having Chris on board that was the assistant division chief for city and county of Oahu for the department, understanding the subject matters, the sewer and the compliance aspect of it to be part of it. So we're working on it. He's working with, I know Peter had routed a draft for us on chapter 20 for staff review. And given all these AOCs coming into play, we just want to make sure we have a good code going out that covers the requirements within the AOCs that would be given.
Dee, you had more to say.
Yes, thank you, Georgine, and thank you, Ramsey. I guess my concern is that this is an issue that we've been aware of. It's something that we've been campaigning for a long time. And this language, I think, was basically templated from Oahu, and it's functional language. It's just a little frustrating to hear, oh, well, we're going to tweak it. We're going to make it perfect and beautiful, when we just want to get something to work with to begin with. We can always come back later and tweak it if you think it's not functioning as you would like it to. But let's just get it going, because I think we have issues. Ramsey, I know I sent you an email personally inquiring, why did we have such a horrendous spike in Enterococcus in Kailua Bay, a place where hundreds of people recreate? And you know, leaking sewer has to be on that rule out list for what caused that pollution. So it's not an issue to be taken lightly, and I would like to see action on this faster rather than slower. My suggestion is implement the language. It's drafted, it's ready. It just requires council approval. Come back and tweak it later.
We have Chris here. Chris, he's in the meeting. He could address your concern, Dee. I got your email. We responded to it. And like I said, Chris, introduce yourself, give a little background, and give Dee your findings on her concern.
Hey guys, I'm Chris. I was Assistant Chief for Environmental Quality at City and County of Honolulu. So one of the things that I was responsible there for was the pretreatment program. So the pretreatment program requires that we modify the county code to include provisions required by the National Pretreatment Program. And there is a section on private laterals in there. So this will be part of that revision, which will be coming out shortly. So as far as the City and County Honolulu's lateral program, there are a couple of glaring problems with it. One is that we have to give like 30-day notice to go on people's property. So that was unworkable for us. So I proposed changing that, but structurally it's going to be identical. There'll be some minor tweaks in there. And again, it's part of this pretreatment program. It's a requirement. So it's going to be done. And it's one of the first steps in establishing the program. So it's going to happen within the next couple of months.
Chris, how about the the findings about the polluted river bay, the email that Dee referred to.
Okay, in Kailua Bay?
Yeah.
You're a little hard to hear, Ramsey.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so the state goes out and collects water samples periodically. These samples aren't tied, pardon me, to rain events. And they're just supposed to give like an ambient measure of the water quality in various places around the island. So recently we had one sample came back with a large number of enterococci bacteria in it. When we got the notice, and I got it from the DOH website, I didn't get any contact directly from DOH. So when we saw that we had a high enterococcus number, we looked at the data from the plant, we looked at the data from the collection system. We had no indication that there was any kind of spill ongoing or any kind of malfunction at the plant. So first step is, yes, rule out the wastewater collection and treatment system. The second thing we looked at is, well, was there rainfall anytime around that time? Because non-point contributions to enterococcus can be significant. And just to back up a bit, the enterococci aren't disease causing. They're an indicator species. They're species that are found in the intestines of warm-blooded animals. And if you see them in a place where you don't normally see them, then it's a cause for concern. Where are they coming from? But literally they can be, well, like on Oahu, we had problems with homeless camps, and they like to camp in places where we had good access to the ocean, and that's where we collected our samples, and sometimes they'd come back high. So we continue to look at what are some of the causes for this excursion. Does it happen again? Does it reoccur periodically? Is there some pattern to it? But right now, it doesn't seem to be related to the collection system or the wastewater treatment system.
Those goats. Get rid of all those goats.
Well, I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be as simple as some kid swam by and went shishi when they were collecting the sample. You know, it's without a coordinated, focused program to look at these, you're kind of left stabbing in the dark if you can't directly connect it to the plant or the collection system. And Dee's got a question, I think.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thank you very much, Chris, for informing us this way. Yeah, I too noted there wasn't a rain event because, yes, we know this panel,
Right.
this commission knows that a lot about enterococcus was we had the benefit of Dr. Rick Bennett as our chair in the past, a microbiologist. So he's taught us a lot about enterococcus as an indicator bacteria. So we know that enterococcus can get stirred up by rain events. It can get stirred up by high surf because it doesn't just live in our intestines. It can also thrive outside the body. So we are educated about enterococcus. We're also educated that it's an indicator bacteria, true, and that is not pathogenic generally in and of itself. But the idea behind indicator bacteria is that they don't just show up independently of other pathogenic bacteria that live in the intestines. So when you see enterococcus, it is cause for concern because it's indicating that there is a risk of disease related to ingestion of other pathogenic bacteria that hang around with enterococcus inside our guts. So we can't just dismiss a high reading as, oh, it's a harmless bacteria. I want to get that very clear for the record. So if we didn't have a rain event, we didn't have a high surf event, you're suggesting it was just an incidental finding.
Well, no. And what I'm saying is we don't have a pattern. We don't have a recurring event. So that, okay, so let me back up a little bit. So the state goes out and monitors various areas looking for water quality issues that could impact public health. So ideally, we don't want to ever have any kind of beach closure or warning, because that's bad. So anytime there's a high reading of whatever it is, nutrients, bacteria, metals, whatever it is, we need to track down what is the source of that, because we don't want it to reoccur. We don't want to get into this pattern of beach is closed, and then here, like many places, people just give up. Oh, the beach is always closed. It's just the way it is. Now we want to get out in front of it and say, we think this is what's happening, whether it's from the collection system, the treatment system, stormwater, or illegal dumping, whatever it is. We want to get to the bottom of it and prevent that from happening again.
It sounds like you guys are working on a revision to the code that would cover the issue of private laterals as well as the pre-treatment requirements. And I heard a couple of months. And so this commission would definitely want to see
Right on.
the proposals and be able to comment early on if we can. Dee.
Yes, one more comment, and this is a kind of a nice point at some point to segue over to wastewater division projects, because as I alerted Ramsey in advance, I do have a question about the status of the replacement of the Hawai'i force main, a force main that pumps sewer wastewater under pressure. And it is evidently in such disrepair that the project is to replace it. So we will be talking about that. Of course, what goes through my mind is, wow, if that force main is in bad shape, could there have been a spurt? So that's where my mind is. Thank you very much.
Rick Gaffney.
Yeah, I wanted to just remind Chris and Ramsey, there was a reoccurrence of the high Invercargill count. Department of Health several days later put up signage on exactly the same beach, the beach behind D. So that's another indicator that, and again, there had not been a rain incident or a high surf incident or anything else obvious. Homeless have effectively been moved off the Kailua Pier. So
good.
The DLNR is doing an excellent job with trying to solve that problem. So that really narrows the total number of potential issues here. And one of the things that we're aware of, those of us who use those waters regularly, is that there is a confluence of laterals and very old sewer pipes. Some of the oldest sewer pipes in Kona are the ones that run immediately adjacent to that little beach, and then come up against another pumping system at the in the lawn area in front of the King Kamehameha Hotel. So it's always of great concern, because most of us who swim there for health purposes. So we don't want to be swimming in foul water. And there have been leaks in that area that the county did take care of some of those leaks fairly recently by lining those pipes. But that doesn't mean that something else hasn't opened up, especially with additional tourists coming into town. The Hotel King Kamehameha went from dead empty to nearly full very quickly. So that lateral is a point of suspicion. So anyway, the point I wanted to make is that the recurrences really don't have any other logical finger to point at them. And I really hope that the county can make the effort to double check and make sure that those ancient steel pipes, ductile pipes, are in fact haven't broken again or haven't broken a seal between the pipes to cause this and recurring potential health issues for people that are using those waters.
So we do have a project to I don't want to get too technical, but we're going to repair a section along the Leahy Drive around the bay. So that is like from the King Cam to Gertrude's, I guess, that general area, or maybe down to Hugo's. And that is ongoing. We're in the process of developing a traffic control plan because we're going to have to close one of the lanes. So I'm anticipating we'll have the traffic control plan done. And again, we're kind of short-staffed here, so I'm doing what I can. But we hope to have that done next month so that we can get it to you and to council so that people understand that, yeah, we're going to try to minimize the inconvenience, but there is going to be some inconvenience. And getting back to the reoccurrence, so a lot of times poor communication is a problem in organizations. So what I do is I check the DOH website, and whenever they post something, I respond to that. And I did not see a second reoccurrence a few days later. I just saw the high reading, they posted signs, and then they took them back down a few days later. So I'll follow up with them and see, was there a reoccurrence or was it just a one-time deal?
I'm gonna have to step in here, guys, and move us along.
Okay.
Ramsey's gonna be disappearing shortly to a cabinet meeting. Just want to make sure that there aren't any other critical solid waste or wastewater updates. Ramsey, did you have anything you wanted to share?
No, I just want to thank Chris for his update. Dean, Rick, we are working on it as I promised to you guys before. I get emails from you. I don't ignore them. They go through the proper channel to get it implemented. And we are very blessed to have Chris on our team, coming from the biggest department on the state when it comes to dealing with these type of issues. We all refer to city and county, and now we got the person that was running that division almost is here with us and within our family. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dee and Rick, for continuing bringing issues to our attention so we could tackle it.
Again, whether there were any other significant projects, updates that you wanted to get across on either the solid waste department or wastewater division?
We're working on just on the budget. There's a lot of challenges for this year budget because of the idea of the status quo. So we definitely got positions. Unfortunately, you guys know that probably more than I do. We were part of Public Works Department. We split from them probably 10 plus years ago. Unfortunately, the mentality of our department is still a division. So we need to revolve from thinking of it as a division to start building it as a department from a staffing level. Unfortunately, when we came from Public Work as a division, there was no building of that division to become a department. So right now, that's what I've been analyzing from equipment, staffing, resource tools that we need to run and function as a department. You've seen it in the solid waste when we had the flat top, people leaving or people on family medical leave. We have nobody to tee it into the positions. We have to close sites. We always reactive rather than proactive. when it comes to certain things. So hopefully, we requested these positions in the budget to allow us to function as a department. As far as projects, definitely the wastewater is a challenge. We'd be going in front of the committee December 7th to give them a priority list of the wastewater division. So you guys could tune to that presentation coming soon. And then after that, we're gonna do another presentation similar to the wastewater, but for the solid waste. So we're working on that with council members. We're working with finance and the mayor on the budget. We're working with consultant and the constituents on certain projects. So as you guys see that upcoming presentation, you'll get an idea of all the projects the department is facing and the priorities are we setting to these projects. And maybe that'll trigger more discussion after these 2 meetings coming up before council.
No, I appreciate it. And I would definitely, Peter, we need to make sure we let people know when the meetings are, that Ramsey's giving these overviews, and also to give us the slide set so that we can look at it ahead of time. He has tremendous amounts of information in those slides. And I've been very impressed at how you've been trying to set the priorities, Ramsey. The other thing is just to listen to the feedback he gets from council members. Know that that's what we're dealing with, and then we need to figure out how do we help influence it. I saw a hand up and I blanked on, I'm not seeing it. I want to try to get us done by noon, plus Ramsey's going. Are there any other specific questions for Ramsey? Okay, not seeing some. I'll let you go to the bathroom before you go to your cabinet meeting, Ramsey.
Thank you. Have a nice Thanksgiving holiday and enjoy. Be
You too.
safe. Don't eat too much. Just
No waste, no waste. We need to move through the agenda. Just standard protocol on item 8 for future agendas. Send it to me. Let me know if you've got hot issues. I try to get them in here for our agenda. I would like to hear feedback, especially from Dee and Rick, on whether or not we want to try to line up Steve Holmes to talk about some of the innovative ways that he's tackled wastewater funding and projects. And we should have something to report out at our next meeting from the barriers group. But then number 9 is announcements. Yep, we're going to have a hearing, and we are the judge and jury for appeals on actions taken by DEM. And maybe I'll turn that over to Kira if you want to explain what our process is, and we need to make sure that people are blocking out the date of December 29.
Thank you, Georgine. Yes, so I think we have it scheduled for December 29th and 30th. And I'm sorry, I think Commissioner Cardwell was that date didn't work for her, but when we had looked at everybody's dates, I thought it would be better to have 2 days in case we need 2 days for the hearing. I wanted it to be consecutive so people don't forget and things are fresh in their mind. So I'm sorry that date didn't work out for you. But basically it's appeal of the director's decision, and just generally, I haven't taken a close look at the appeal yet, but the director's been billing 2 wastewater accounts for 1 TMK, and the appellant or the property owner is appealing that decision. So it comes to this commission. You will have to decide in favor to reverse or modify the director's decision. You will hear the evidence from the department and also through the appellant from any testimony, any documents or exhibits that are produced and admitted into the record. And I will prepare a memo under attorney-client privilege, just kind of outlining the process for you folks and for Georgine especially to walk through. Georgine as the chair is a presiding officer, so she will be responsible for swearing in the witnesses, keeping the proceeding moving along, ruling on evidentiary objections. However, the decision is the board's decision, or excuse me, the commission's decision. So that's I don't want to get into too much detail since it's an agenda item, but I don't want to get into too much detail since we'll have to wait until the parties come before you and give the evidence.
Yeah, as I understand it, we should not be trying to.
Yeah, don't do
look up
any
information
independent
about it
research.
ourselves.
Right, you cannot do any independent research, and that's going to be a part of my memo as far as the boundaries. Since it's an adjudicatory function, you can only base your decision on the evidence that's presented to you at the hearing via the appellant or the department. And that would be the director and his decision through his deputy corporation counsel. I don't know, or I guess I should say, Georgine and I have set up a pre-hearing conference with the parties that will take place in early December, where we will narrow down the issues, produce a scheduling order, set out deadlines for the parties to submit exhibits, witness lists, requests for subpoenas, any motions, and we will do that at the beginning of December. But just generally, you're not supposed to do any independent investigation. If you have a conflict with either the property owner, you should make that known to Georgine so we can work that out. If it might affect quorum or something, just let Georgine know and we can work through that. That's all I have for now. I don't recall the EMC actually ever having a contested case hearing, so this will be interesting. And then, of course, your decision can be appealed to Third Circuit Court since the appellant does have a right to judicial review. So this is just a part of the process.
So this meeting can be both in person and Zoomed, or is it everybody's going to Hilo or Kona? Or
No,
where?
I think it's dual, right, Peter? We're gonna have an option for dual.
Correct. It just needs to work out the technical details, which is why I'm glad we made all the mistakes today. And next time will go perfectly smoothly.
Right.
Yeah, so generally, all of the commissioners will have like a packet of the exhibits that are labeled. So whenever, for example, an exhibit is going to be submitted into evidence, you have it in front of you already. And then what would happen at the hearing is Peter will have an envelope of the exhibits for the record.
And our biggest issue is just to make sure we have quorum, right?
Yeah, we need at least 5.
So I need some clarity on what conflict of interest looks like. I know the appellant.
Okay.
So do I automatically have a conflict of interest, or, I mean, I don't do business with him. I just know him personally. And not well.
Would that impede your ability to be impartial?
I don't think so.
I mean, you and I can have an offline discussion, but that's generally what the guidelines are. If it impedes your ability to be impartial over the proceeding, or obviously if you're related to that person, or if you have a really close relationship, then that's something that we will need to discuss, but that's generally what it is.
Yeah, it's very casual.
And one thing we could do, maybe at a pre-hearing conference, Georgine, I can make a note, is just mention to the deputy corporation counsel who represents the director and see if the director or she would have any objection. Okay. But we can talk through that.
Any other questions about that? I am so looking forward to being the presiding judge.
So is this 2 days long or can it all be wrapped up in one day?
That's what I had asked here to set it for 2 days just in case. We won't know how many witnesses either party intend to call until our pre-hearing conference. So once Georgine and I go through that, we'll have an idea. If it's just going to be one witness each party, I don't think it shouldn't take more than a day, but I'm just not sure the intents of either parties. So that's why we had set out 2 days just to be conservative.
Do you know what time you're gonna start?
Do we have a time, Peter?
This is for the 29th?
Yes.
Yes,
It's
it's just
at
in the
9.
agenda. 9 a.m. ADRC.
Are you not able to make that day?
It's
Commissioner
just I
Matthews?
have to travel up to Kona, an hour and 30 minutes, probably
We-
2 with
You should be able
construction.
to Zoom.
I just thought maybe I should be there in person rather than Zoom since I was having so many problems. So I wasn't sure. Are you able to hear me clearly with using my mic?
Oh, it was great today.
Okay, so I guess it was my computer, not my connection. I guess I can Zoom it. I just thought being in person would be better.
I mean, we'll see what the other party, if they've got restrictions or they care.
It looks like
Okay.
it's gonna be in Hilo too, Lee, not Kona. I don't know if that's closer for you. It's gonna be,
Originally it was Kona. Did they change it?
It's going to be in Hilo.
Okay. It's a more pleasant drive, but still the same amount of time.
Okay. Any other comments on the hearing? Our next meeting is scheduled for the 27th. So that meeting of the commission would be just limited to the topic of that appeal. We wouldn't have other agenda items about business that we're dealing with. So our next full meeting is scheduled for January 27th, which is a Thursday, which we changed our mind that we went back to Wednesday with our earlier motion. So I guess it's the 26th, Peter?
Correct. That's why the agenda says subject to change with 6 days notice, because there needs to be some wiggle room in there.
Okay, so let's assume we're going back to Wednesdays and it would be January 26th. And we'll obviously be sending out notices for that. Which I forget which location it was set up for, Peter, do you remember?
It's going to be Hilo. January 26th.
And again, we would allow for Zooming.
Right.
There are, I don't know if you want to talk now about some of the new requirements that kick in next year regarding Zooming and having a physical location for people to participate. Maybe that's something we could just send out as a FYI.
Yeah, I'll put something together as just some guidance. There's a new law about sunshine law that will affect public meetings. So I'm going to put something together that's kind of short and sweet and direct. There's a lot of material out there through the OIP, so I don't want you guys having to trudge through a bunch of paperwork. So I'll put something together for you all.
But I believe that we are going to be successful in doing Zoom offerings for people who can't make it to the meeting. But if you'd like to go to the meeting locations that we can identify, probably Kona at the Civic Center or Hilo at the aging, whatever they call that place. We'll let you know those options so that you aren't going to be bound to having to drive across the island every month. Okay. And then we will, at the January meeting, if you've got some topics you want to cover, we'll have election of chair and vice chair. And we'll talk about whether we want to set up those priorities again. And otherwise, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And as Ramsey said, don't eat too much, don't waste anything. And have a great New Year and Christmas, because we're missing it all.
Thanks, Georgine. Happy holidays, everyone.
Motion to adjourn?
Do we get a motion to adjourn?
I move the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
Second.
We got lots of seconds, everybody seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, guys. It's been
Thank
a
you,
really
Georgine.
good year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgine, and
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Chris and Ramsey and everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. Aloha.
Aloha.
Ahui ho.